Annie Ducan is the former state crime lab chemist of Massachusetts, and she has just received 3 to 5 years in prison. And when you hear why she's received those years, I hope that your blood boils in the same way that mine did. Now, she used to work for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Laboratory from 2003 to 2012, and she was tasked with doing chemical analysis of drug samples to find out if people who'd been arrested for possession of those drugs, if they were actually drugs, how much, and those sorts of things. And we found out that over the course of her time in that office, she has potentially tampered with up to 40,000 different cases evidence. Because she said she was running the chemical analysis and she was not actually doing so. Sometimes she would just look at it and decide what it was. Now, look, she's received 27 different crimes. She's pled guilty to 27 different crimes, including tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and inflating her credentials. Now, we'll get to her motives. But the numbers are just crazy. Already, in the time since, I believe it was July of 2012, when they initially found out she'd been tampering with this stuff, superior courts in 8 counties had held almost 3,000 hearings for 950 people as a result of the drug lab scandal. These are people who were sent to prison unjustly because of the actions of Annie Ducan. And through mid-October, that's 349 drug offenders had already been released.
This is a prosecutor's nightmare, by the way, obviously.
I would imagine so.
I mean, my goodness, for years, like this is going to just just constipate the system, basically, since we're going with that language here on the show. Yeah, I mean, my goodness. I mean, I was a defense lawyer, so I was like, this was like my greatest fear. And to see this happening, and we'll get to it later, not the first time. This is happening in Texas, it's happening in Colorado, this is happening, there was suspicion of it happening in my home state of North Carolina. This type of thing goes on. So they always think we're paranoid as defense lawyers when we think they're in cahoots with the state. But this type of stuff really goes on.
Now, can defense lawyers request your own lab work done by an outside lab?
Yeah, but that's where the justice system is not economically equal. Because if you've got the money, that costs a hell of a lot of money, to bring out outside counsel to do this type of analysis.
Most of these people are rich, right?
Funny, John. But it can be happening. It's thousands of dollars for independent analysis. Yeah.
Look, I think every one of these people that didn't have a violent crime associated with the crime they were convicted for should be set
just
free.
Released. Yep.
I mean, that goes to a bigger argument about drug laws and should people be incarcerated for it. But I mean, there's so much here that you gotta let these people go, even if it's just on the assumption, especially if it's just for doing drugs. Then you gotta let them go.
And so, do you think we're ever going to have that larger conversation? Is it coming? Is marijuana pushing that conversation of when do we start treating drug addiction the same way we treat alcohol addiction? Why do we have two separate, this is you're a criminal, this you're sick, you need treatment. We all can recognize that with alcohol or cigarettes, but we can't do it with drugs. Why is that, you think?
That's true. I would argue this, though, that very rarely are people incarcerated physically with jail time, because that's normally a felony sentence, right? And that very rarely are you given that for just possession. Normally that's possession with intent to sell. And that's, I think, at that point, a different thing. Now you're not talking about someone who has their own addiction, so therefore maybe there's an equivalency there with mental health or something. You're talking about somebody who's making a profit off of something that we as a society has deemed to be illegal at this point.
Is that true? So if the average person, like Trey Raydell, for example, he didn't get any jail time.
Right.
But if the average person had been caught buying coke by the feds, the average person wouldn't go to jail?
For just buying coke? No, because in most states, I mean, we were surprised to see that in that state that was a felony, just possession of that little bit.
Right.
So in most states, that's a misdemeanor, especially a first-time offender, you get probation, or even if it's multiple, So very rarely does that happen.
Really? So people are not in prison for non-violent drug offenses?
No. I'm making a distinction between possession, just personal use possession, and possession with intent to sell, which is based off quantity.
Oh,
See what I'm
okay.
saying?
So you're saying that they put people in jail if they can make the case that they're going to sell it. And
Well,
that's
also,
who's
we're
in
not
jail?
talking about 3 strikes laws, different
Right.
state laws.
Primarily. I mean, I don't want a whole bunch of Texas saying that my cousin. It happens, people. It happens. But the majority of your prison sentences, that's possession with intent to sell.
I think to your question, though, about will this lead to the bigger discussion about, I think that as weed gets legalized in this country, which is sort of, it's the next gay rights thing, it's going to happen state by state, I think we will have a more somehow mature discussion about that, actually, because people are going to start it's why you should never, they shouldn't have ever made weed to be the monster that they always did, because then people smoked weed and they go, oh, this isn't so bad, and then that causes them to try other drugs that are actually much worse. So I think once they open up the weed thing and say, okay, this is, it's grown naturally from the earth now. I'm becoming like big pothead here, but you got my point.
Quinoa,
it's like, it's quinoa, there's a high protein and low in carbs. But I think
That's
that
funny.
maybe will allow us to have a better discussion about it. Maybe am I being Pollyanna-ish? I think
But-
that's what you're going with.
But it's funny because we've gotten to a point already where Trey Randall, when he was giving his mea culpa, he said, "I hope that going forward I could be a role model for people." You know, first of all, you have to put the brakes on for a couple of months after you get caught before you can
Right.
start role modeling again, right? You're a role model right now for someone doing coke illegally. That's what you're a role model for.
Right.
But so they're already saying, "Oh, we realize that this is a disease and we all have to help. I need help to overcome this." So it's already kind of losing some of that criminality attached to it. I think it's a good thing. I think we waste a lot of money and time and effort and all that stuff. Imagine how many teachers we could hire if we weren't incarcerating people for drugs and didn't treated it like a medical problem, which is what it is. Addiction. It's just a chemical reaction, like Dr. Drew says.
Well, and I want to take a point to say this too. There is something that is very little known about, something called drug court. A lot of jurisdictions, including right here in LA County, my home state of North Carolina, we have something called drug treatment court for that very purpose, Jimmy, that says we're going to treat this like what it is, a disease for users. So, but again, if you got caught with a truckload of coke, you're not going to drug treatment court. You know what I'm saying?
What if you have
So
a big
like,
appetite?
high tolerance,
What
right?
if you're like a Rob Ford?
Yeah, right.
I'm not an
Nah,
addict.
Rob Ford could go to drug treatment court. Yes, he
I'm not
can.
They're
an
probably
addict.
more liberal up there.
Yeah.
So I love that we're
I don't
obviously
quite know why you're saying I have a problem. I'm not an addict. I was drunk once at the Air Canada Center, and it's never happened again.
We
Good
did
accent,
one of
good
my
accent.
drunken stupors.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're having the drug conversation. There's
Have I
another
brought-
angle that I'm not that I'm actually more angry about. So here she was doing this because she wanted to be seen as productive, so she wasn't actually doing the work, and also she wrote an email saying that she wanted drug offenders off the streets, so she was biased. So this was only happening with her in Massachusetts when it came to drug laws. But if it's this easy for one person to influence 40,000 different
Yes,
cases
absolutely.
and send people to jail when they shouldn't have been there, you're telling me we should have capital punishment in a
Yes.
country
I
where
agree.
one person can throw off tens of thousands of cases. No, you cannot have it in a system this imperfect, this demonstrably imperfect. You cannot kill those people. If we executed all the people who were sent there for drugs, 350? Yeah, they would not be back out on the streets right now.
Yeah.
They'd be in body bags.
And that's my whole argument, John, about why I don't support capital punishment. Because in my personal opinion, I think there are some crimes that, yeah, maybe that makes some sense, but the system's too flawed. Reasonable doubt is not a high enough standard, in my opinion, to execute somebody.
Yeah, I mean, as a rule, I just don't believe the state should be allowed to kill anybody, but
Vigilantes, go for it. Yeah.
Vigilantes can go. I don't think the state should be allowed to put people
Bad kids
put
should be
to
allowed to
death,
kill.
but you're making a great point.
Yeah.
That if one person
This
can have
shows.
this kind
Yeah.
of systemic effect,
Yeah.
then just imagine what else we'll find
You know,
out.
your point about the death penalty, John, it's a bigger point of what we want the criminal justice system to achieve. You know, we don't even ever talk about rehabilitation anymore. It's just all crime and punishment and crime and punishment. And I think we need to look at our, what are
Other
our goals?
options. What are other options? Drug court, veterans court. This is something else that's popping up and has been successful. Because again, if you make it a program that's by design to rehabilitate, to get people back to a space of productivity, that to me is justice, not just purely punitive. That's bullshit.
And the death penalty, you are correct when you say you can't implement a death penalty because of how flawed our system is. I'm against the death penalty for a bigger reason because it sends the wrong message. It's the message of sometimes violence is the answer. Sometimes killing people works, and we're going to do it. As a state, we're going to do it, which is the wrong answer. It's the wrong message to send all the time. I think you have to have a respect for life, and that's why I'm against abortion. Anyway.
Yeah, and my final point on this, if you think that you can't really directly compare the two things because she was testing for drugs, well, okay, who's doing DNA tests? Who's doing blood tests for crime
Ballistic
scenes, for
tests
murders?
for murders,
Exactly.
yeah.
These tests can be manipulated in the same way I imagine that these drug tests can.